Welcome to episode 166 of the Startup Show. Today I'm here at the offices of SwissSign Group and I'm talking to the CEO Markus Naef. We are talking everything about how his career in telecom helped him to become a CEO he is today, but also like what SwissSign is and the EID, how it is to work with the government and the biggest corporates here in Switzerland. And last but not least, why he recommends his son to become an entrepreneur and pursue his passion. Make sure to stay tuned for the whole video. Welcome to episode 166 of the Startup Show. Today, I'm here at the offices of SwissSign, and I'm very excited to talk to the CEO of the group, Markus Naef. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. It's really exciting to have a little bit of different types of companies on the show. And I'm very excited to talk to you about all of the topics around EID and SwissSign. But nevertheless, I really want to get started as it is tradition on the Startup Show, where you get first a minute and a half to introduce yourself to my audience out there.
Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Markus Naef. I'm married. I'm a proud father of a son. We do a lot of sports together. I love skiing, I love mountain biking, I love playing golf with all my family members. And my professional life, I started first at university. I made an MBA in St. Gallen and afterwards as well an MBA in Master in Law. And then I started in the telco industry. So I was for almost 9 years, I was with Orange, now sold. And then I had the chance to take over the country management of Switzerland for an entertainment company, Fox, and after 2 years, not it was boring, but I was very excited as well, as I've taken over in addition to that one the Russian market. So I was flying very much often back and forth from Moscow, St. Petersburg and Zürich. Very exciting times. And after 7 years, I got a call from, at that time, Libo Voncina, who was the CEO of Sunrise, if I would like to have a position within his management board. And it was very exciting as well because there was the IPO was in the forefront. So it was the first time participating at the IPO. And after 3 years, and now with SwissSign for 1.5 years, almost 2 years.
Yes.
Another exciting journey. So my first working day was at the joint venture of Post and SBB.
Yes.
And in the meantime, we are 20 shareholders. I think we are in the spotlight in terms of EID, in terms of digitalization, e-gov portals, and so on. A startup on the one hand, but on the other hand as well a transformation of an old company, old in the sense of, nevertheless, we have some services in place which are since 12, 15 years already working. And now we need as well to bring them up to speed and bring to the next level on digitalization.
Very good. So one of the first questions, just more of about your background. How do you feel that like the previous jobs at Telco and television helped you now for this role today as a CEO?
To be honest, it's very similar. And if you see the crowd, the team now we have brought together in the last 18 months, we have a lot of telco people in there as well. There are a lot of similarities in terms of, I would say, products and services, how to market certain things, building up an ecosystem. And you can imagine having a mobile phone or having a phone and the other side has no phone. There's no way to talk to each other. So it's the same here. We are building up a two-sided market. Two-sided market in the sense, on the one hand, you have the owners of the Swiss ID, and on the other hand, you have the kind of the online shops where you can use your Swiss ID, and you need to grow both sides of this market. And that's why it's very similar in the telecom. And telco had a lot of things to do as well when you see all the services which are coming up or that came up recently, all these OTT services like WhatsApp. There was no need having WhatsApp me alone. I need to have someone else on the other side having WhatsApp. So it's building up these two-sided markets, very similar.
One of the things, before we go more into SwissSign, is I read in one of the interviews you gave to Netzwochen that like one of your goals was to create a certain company culture here within SwissSign. Is this something you feel like you achieved over the last 2 years? And what was this culture that you were looking for?
Yeah, I think we are still on the way on this journey. And I think the most important thing is you can only be successful if you have a great team around you. And building up this team is difficult, is as well kind of heavy load on the workload, I would say. And you need to know a little bit, because we started last year with approximately 40 people. So we engaged 55 people. We are ending up with 85 people. And engaging people and building in parallel the culture is not always kind of compatible. So we're building the culture now, but we're in the midst of building this culture. We have as well a team. I'm a strong believer that culture can only come from inside. You need to live it as a boss. You need to give kind of a guidance, but it needs to come from inside. And this inside team we have in place since half a year. We have a kind of a culture team, a team who's really looking forward of all these kind of values which we define within SwissSign. And it's a journey. We are still ongoing. And I have set the goal when I started here. After 3 years, we want to be the most loved employer being of SME in the IT industry.
Okay, very
good. Hope
good.
we're going to achieve it.
Very good. Okay, so let's talk about SwissSign. Everybody out there who has no idea about what SwissSign actually is, maybe you can give them a quick introduction.
Okay, love to do so. SwissSign, we have kind of two pillars where we build our business on. On the one hand, we have the traditional, call it traditional CA business, where we sell certificates, MPKI solutions. So everything which is around digital signature. This is kind of the pillar where we have already certain revenue. And by the way, we are doubling our number of sales year on year so far. We are on a very good track, which helps as well because we are the only Swiss so-called trust service provider remaining in the Swiss market. And the Swiss brand is very much, I would say, enriched with good vibes as well outside of Switzerland. So we have this kind of brandness, this brand value, this advantage, meaning quality, neutrality, and everything which is in that angle. And on the other pillar, it's the SwissSign, this identity service, which we have already launched roughly 16 months ago. We have currently more than 725,000 users on our services already, and we're growing by roughly 2,000 a day. And this is the identity service. The identity service of SwissSign has a potential and will be, when the law comes into force, the official EID, the official digital identity, which we're going to provide to each user. So in order that the user can seamless, without any media break, having all the transactions digital.
Maybe what's interesting to maybe give some context around is like the structure of SwissSign Group and who are the shareholders.
Okay, the structure is it's kind of easy. As I said before, we started with Post and SBB, and then we enlarged our shareholder to 20 shareholders. And within that kind of three pillars we have, I would say, we have the kind of more state-related companies. So we added Swisscom to that pillar together with Post and SBB. Then we have kind of a bank pillar, because we believe strongly, and if you see as well abroad in the Nordics, for example, where the bank ID was very successful and banks are kind of as well, they have a trust history, they have a tradition in this field. So we have this kind of bank pillar where we have UBS, Credit Suisse, Raiffeisen, ZKB 6 and certain cantonal banks, which is important to say, because cantonal banks are still kind of a link to the state, to the canton. So we have the state-owned, we have the cantonal banks, which were kind of semi-state already. So we are very much in that governmental space. Plus we have strategic investors or strategic shareholders, which for the time being mainly are from the insurance industry. The insurance industry from, as I always say, from A, AXA, like to Z, like Zürich. Yeah. And we have some health insurance companies which we have in there as well, because it's very important. You need to know the EIDs as well, then kind of a method to log into the so-called patient dossier, which comes as well a law into force in Switzerland by mid of next year or beginning of next year. So the Swiss ID, the EID, is kind of the key or the access point where you can go as well into this patient dossier. So it's very important as well to have all these people from the consortium together.
Working with this type of companies can be somewhat challenging. We've heard it a lot of times when startups try to do POCs with bigger companies. It's usually a very long process. What are you learning so far, like working with these big corporates?
I agree with you that sometimes that you heard it on the one hand, but to be honest, when we built up this company. It was a long process. That was a short process, but still it was a process in there. So because the reason why SwissSign has been getting bigger and bigger, because every one of the shareholders wanted to really first say, we want to build the infrastructure for digitalization for Switzerland. So that's why you have this big company. This is kind of the spirit, how they came together. And for sure, and afterwards they have as well some particular needs which come into the field. But to be honest, I think we have been capable with the board and as well with all the people around us. We have some advisory boards with all the CEOs of these companies. The spirit remained in that sense. We had one or two POCs at the beginning of our journey where it was a little bit, we had we as a small agile company and let's say all the 500-pound gorillas or elephants around us have not been that agile. So we had kind of a certain alignment discussions, but I would say since the last 12 months, they really say, look, you are this kind of building this infrastructure for Switzerland first and then for us, because everyone can attach the Swiss ID to its services in an easy way. There's no need to have special rollouts in certain bigger companies. So I think we have achieved to remain kind of independent in that sense and to remain agile.
Just quickly want to switch sides to the user side, especially when you look at the eID. Like, what is the status quo right now and how will it affect introducing eID to the consumer?
So, as I said before, for the time being, we have 725,000 users, kind of individuals like you and me, on the one hand. On the other hand, all these touch points where you can use the Swiss ID, I think we are on the number of 25 now, which is a growing number as well. It takes a certain time, to be honest, to say, because it's a clear B2B business. When we have a kind of green light from a potential touch point, sometimes it takes certain times, up to 18 months for such touch points to get ready for Swiss ID. So we have still a certain time lag to do so. For instance, we just signed a bigger one 2 days ago. We have as well the commitment now that SBB, so all the transportation, Swiss Pass is coming on our system by mid of this year. So by June, end of June, beginning of July. We know as well all the insurances will be part of our system. So this ecosystem is growing. By having more relying parties or the more touch points, you will get more IDOs, identity owners. So it's kind of this tipping point where we are getting bigger and bigger.
One of the key questions, I mean, like is always like when you look at this, and I'm sure there's also hype about the whole idea of blockchain, but like how come you decided to specifically not use the data to protect it, let's say through a blockchain or through some other, let's say, tech that is it already like standard or like state of the art?
There are two different things probably. On the one hand, probably give you certain things why we have not yet used blockchain, or we don't know if you're going to use blockchain. We have done a POC on blockchain. And I think, to be honest, we have certain challenges to build up this market. We have certain challenges to bring up the eID into force, or the law into force. So it's already certain challenges. Having an additional challenge go with blockchain, I'm not sure that is the right way to do. And having said about blockchain, we have done certain testings on blockchain. We have done a POC on blockchain. But we have seen so far the maturity on blockchain is not yet there that it can be really scalable. Having said that, in a labor, you might get some great terms of latency, but if you go then into mass, we're talking about 4 or 5 seconds where you only need for an authentication. And the people or the users are not very patient, and especially when it comes to digital features. So 5 seconds for a user is not that something which we will accept. So we need to have a system which is accepted by the user and as well by the touch points. And in addition to that, to the touch points as well on the blockchain side, it's not easy as well to hook on the blockchain to your touch point. Mm-hmm. So you need to have special kind of features which has a certain cost link to it. And I'm not sure that everyone will bear these costs at the beginning as well. There it would have been kind of a hindering for us to build up the two-sided market. The second question you ask about how we secure, there are other means to secure. You can do a HSM. in the middle of a certain transaction. We have done that one. We have certain cryptographic codes included in our system. We have people from ETH, which ones are certain are engaged in our company, and some as well are very close to our company. So we do all means in order to protect the data. That's clear. That's our first thinking in the morning in order that all the data is protected. Plus we have a certain dispositif where we have, for instance, the identity data are not in the same kind of server or in the same kind of locker than, for instance, the usage data. So all these kind of means we have put in place, which by the means as well is required by law.
Talking of law is the perfect segue to the next question. One of the things is that there's a law that is going to be in place soon, which probably requires a lot of lobbying, being at the right time and the right places within the government. How is that going for you, knowing that you have to rely on a certain law to become in place to be really efficient? And then I will come with the second question, will be the monopoly scenario.
You said to be efficient, we need the law. I'm not somehow agree on that one. I would say the law would help us to be more efficient or more successful, or let's say creating an additional need on certain sides, because we clearly said as well, if the law is not coming, we still continue our journey. The law will help us that we have a certain harmonization among different laws which are already existing, because you can see already now you have different laws and you have different level of identification. For instance, if you open a bank account, you have certain requirements, you have certain needs, how you need to show your identity that Cédric is going to be Cédric. You can either do it via physical in front of a bank, or you do it via video. That's one law. Then you have the next law, which more or less has as well to do with identification. You have the digital signing law. There you only can do a physical identification. So there's not kind of a compatibility of these kind of two laws. And with the EID law allows then to harmonize different standards. First of all, that you say with an EID, for instance, substantial, you can open a bank account, you can do digital signing, you can access your EPD, also patient dossier. So it's kind of an easier way as well for people to have access. This is really as well our position. We position Swiss ID as being the key, the access point for all these kind of applications where a certain identity is required, an identity on a certain level. So that's one thing in terms of how we position ourselves. And that's why we, as well as I said before, we still would continue our journey if the law would not come. I think it's only an easier way. It gives you kind of more security on the law side when the law is in place.
Again, as I said before, so once you have this law in place and there's more or less only one provider for the EID, wouldn't that be, number one, held more or less privately, a law in place that makes it more or less the only provider, and is this not a problem, let's say, for a monopoly case where you will be the only company with all of this data? Again,
you have two different questions. If we are the one who are having this data, or the one if the monopoly. First of all, the law is kind of open. Everyone can be a so-called IDP, so everyone can apply for this IDP in front of the ISP, which is at the end recognition of an IDP. We know that certain, as well in the patient dossier, there are one or two other IDPs around the corner. So it doesn't mean that we're going to be in a monopolistic situation on the EID, because I'm a strong believer as well, the one or two which are going now by next year into the game or into the race for an EPD as well, they will as well be liking to be recognized as an IDP for EID. So therefore, monopoly, I would not say this is going to be a monopoly. I would say in terms of our strengths and in terms of our size, we are, I would say, the key player. This is clearly the case. If that turns into a monopoly and then the other ones will give up, we will see. Hopefully not, because I think competition is always good as well for the customer. By the way, at the end, for the customer, our services are for free. So it's not a competition on pricing, but it's probably more a competition on services, because at the end, we need to deliver services which brings value to the IDO and as a Swiss ID owner or the EID owner, and as well to the touchpoint. This would probably as well be good for the whole economy in that sense. And in terms of data, for certain data, we are not keeping that data. We are kind of a relay. We receive certain data, we pass it to the touch point, and then we delete it on our side. We know there has been time of a connection in there because we have some audit trails legally to provide, but we're not keeping that data in that sense. And the EID data we're going to receive is as well limited. We receive it from the FETBOL, or from the server of the state, from the FETBOL. It's limited to dedicated attributes which are named in the law. So it's name, first name, last name, birth date, and so on. This is anyhow a little bit already public for certain people, but we're not going to keep it anyhow. So that's.
When you have to look at, let's say, the next couple of years, what is your vision for SwissSign Group? Where do you want them to be in, let's say, 5 to 6 years?
On the one hand, I would say on the certificate side, we already started the internationalization on that business. We are doing very good in the German part so far. We have some ideas now to go even broader. We have some demands from all over the place. And I think, as I said before, that's the Swiss brand, and being the only Swiss, real Swiss on that side helps us. Jurisdiction is very stable. And with all this kind of discussion now about NSA, about these backdoors, which are with Huawei and so on, it really helps us in that sense, being a kind of within a stable nation, having the quality. So on the CA side, we really would like to go much more international. And in terms with the Swiss ID, man, to be honest, there, yeah, we have some goals. I would like to have 5-6 years from now, 1,000 plus touch points in our ecosystem, and being the EID player or the player with, let's say, 4 or 5 million users using the Swiss ID, and the Swiss ID using on a daily basis by logging into banks, by logging into some eGov portals. So it's kind of your trusted provider, the ideal trusted provider to do some digital business. Mm-hmm. We need to say, because it's why our positioning is as well different. That's why I strongly believe into that one, that the people are looking much more now into control, where the data flows and where the data goes, and how is the data going to be kept at the other place. I want to do that kind of a comparison. And in the early days of the 90s, there has been very much no one considering about pollution, of air pollution, just because everyone wants to have the greatest car, the biggest car. But now I think this has changed. Everyone is looking now for reducing the pollution, reducing the climate discussion we have. And I see certain parallels now coming up, at least in the near future as well, with data. And at the beginning of all these services, everyone was more or less kind of free, spreading the data around. And now we see certain people, and I think this kind of society comes more and more into place, that the people want to control their data. And that's how SwissSign is positioned, because the control of your data is always with the user.
I want to move the discussion a little bit more towards the industry I saw like IT for Gov or e-government. How do you see, let's say, Switzerland position itself over the next couple of years on a global scale, like internationally?
And there are two things. At the starting point, I think is always good. It's always easy to be better, because we're starting at, I think, rank number 64 out of 127 countries. So we are kind of in the middle. And I would say to achieve a better position is not that difficult. And you might have seen as well, even yesterday, Uli Mauro really clearly said to all the cantons and the communities, you need now to start your digital journey. And so I'm a strong believer that all these digital initiatives, which more or less come into force, that Switzerland will gain a lot of rankings in that sense. And I think we are on the good path now, becoming, with the EID, with all these initiatives from the regulatory side as well from the technical side, to be much more eGov in a digital way. And so therefore I'm a strong believer that we're going to achieve that in the next 2 to 3 years. It's not always a kind of supporting factor that we are kind of a federal state, because you have the community can have a certain decision, and there's no way to impose certain things from top to down. But on the other hand, it helps us as well to have some labor part in the sense of test field in a certain community. They can test something. If that goes good, it can be spread all over Switzerland. This kind of the federalism is on the one side is helping, on the other side is kind of a little bit slowing down factor.
Now, when you look in general, like, what do you think or what do you perceive as, let's say, the hardest part when working together with the government so closely?
Yeah, I'm not the very much patient person, to be honest, and though therefore it's for me the hardest part to sometimes a little bit to follow certain processes which are required and fully understand. But sometimes there I would love to see much more openness and much more the capability as well to test something. And if something goes good, then we can go along with all these processes. But sometimes you need to go through the processes and then it's going to be kind of a slowing down a little bit. And it's not...
When you look at, let's say, I mean, you see like the Switzerland, the top executives, everybody's talking about digital. How digital is everybody? Is it really... Are we getting there, or what is the status quo that you perceive the Swiss corporate leaders?
Yeah, I think the Swiss corporate leaders, they are there, I would say. They know at least it's important. There's a certain way that every company needs to be much more digitalized, otherwise it's probably a competing, hindering factor. So the top management is there. Where it's missing a little bit in the middle management. So what we see sometimes and how we are confronted a little bit, that the top management, they clearly say we want to go in that direction. The middle management is then has a certain fear of probably losing the job. And that's as well, it's always in the media as well, that digitalization might eliminate certain jobs. And I've seen yesterday a speech from Shira Kaplan, and she made that there somehow digitalization can reduce, I think, only in the banking sector in Switzerland, 100,000 jobs, and it's a big portion out of 300,000. Yes. So that's why in the middle management is a certain fear. But I'm a strong believer as well. We need to change the attitude. We need to get out of the comfort zone, and as well the middle management should get out of the comfort zone, because there's only new ways and new jobs are coming up. But sticking to the old job, it's never good. Holding really on the past, it's not always very good for the future. So therefore, I think we need as well to get out of this fear of losing jobs and whatever might be the negative spiral of a digitalization within a company, but to show them as well the opportunity which digitalization will bring within the same company. But they need to be open for new learnings, they need to be open for taking some courses, and this is how as well I perceive a little bit more on an educational level. We should take away this fear and we should promote it in a sense, look, there are other opportunities, and if we are not doing these opportunities, we are not getting out of the comfort zone, then we have the Kodak example.
The Swiss startup ecosystem is something that I usually discuss on the show. One of the key questions that I'm curious to know also from you, do you work with startups? If yes, with which ones? Or did you decide to internally develop everything?
No. We work with startups, and I think as well we have talks with startups. We have already contracted with startups. We are bringing up to speed or into life an application by mid of May this year, which is made by a startup. So it's not only that we engage people, we as well new companies which engage other people. So we are building as well there an ecosystem. I think this is the way how we need to go, because it's not always an invented here syndrome. Yes. We are very close to startups mainly coming now from the ETH. We have close contacts too, and so far I'm a big supporter of building up this ecosystem. We need to have whatever we need to build or make or buy, but whatever we buy is more or less from certain startups at the moment, yeah.
And how do you perceive overall the startup ecosystem here?
It's getting better and better, to be honest. I think it's vibrant. There are really some cool, innovative, I would say, startups around the corner. And so therefore, I'm happy to be part of this kind of startup where we are not kind of a startup, to be honest. Yeah. We're in the mix a little bit, but we are close to this one, and we are in the tech field. Yes. But we can be a promoter for certain startups, bringing that one into the Swiss ID, and as well then giving them a kind of a perspective on working together with us.
What would you recommend your children and why? Entrepreneurship or corporate?
Entrepreneurship. And why? Because I think it's the best way. If you grow up in the morning, you can do your whatever you need to do. It gives you kind of a certain passion. I'm a strong believer that the big corporates are kind of gone a little bit as well in the future. There's kind of small dots within these corporates. And I'm a strong believer that if you can really do whatever you like to do it.
Who is your biggest role model and why?
I think everyone with a certain passion for its leisure, for its profession, everyone who can bring a certain fire and light a certain fire out of their job, out of their passion, they have it in that sense. I would not say something specific because it can be different from day to day. If you look at sport, I would say Roger Federer is a great guy. He's tuned as everyone, but if you go as well into the tech side, then you have people from Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, all these people. But I'm not saying it's a role model. I'm not admire people in that sense. I rather prefer to talk to my peers, and that's...
How do you balance work and life?
You need to ask my family currently a little bit. No, I think I'm capable to do these kind of journeys especially on the weekends, where I really sometimes say, look, it's family time, which I need as well. So I go into the mountains with my family, do some sports with my family. It's not always easy, but I think I have a great family in that sense. They really understand that we are in a certain we're in a certain period of time where we need to put probably more than normal into the work, but I think as well there, if you have a certain passion, if you really like it, then the family likes it as well. It has a kind of a positive spirit as well towards the family, so I think it's a give and take.
How did you turn failure into a learning experience?
I would say failure is always allowed, and it should be allowed, and I think we should be kind of an analysis to be done, and then we should learn out of this failure, bring all the experts together, and then move forward.
Do you have any specific example?
On failures.
About yourself, yeah.
About myself. Yeah, for sure, you have certain times taken the wrong decision and it went into the wrong path. And based on that one, do you clearly say, look, what has been the analysis, what has been the SWOT out of this decision? Then let's correct it and let's improve. And it's always a kind of a continuous improvement process you're gonna follow on that one, and for sure everyone makes failures, everyone makes mistakes.
And the last one, what do you look for when you hire?
When I hire, to be honest, I look for rather my stomach feeling. Yes. Because I think it's as well kind of you are working here with people you need to like. You don't need to love them, you need to like them, you need to trust them. And I think I have a good sensorium in sense of, can I really, these people already, it's already saying that within, I think, a tenth of a second, you have kind of made your decision. If you like these people, if you can work with these people. Because all the people which apply with us, they have the know-how. And on the other hand, if they are not always, they have the know-how, for instance, for the dedicated job, but if they have the willingness, the patience, to go that way, everyone can do almost everything, I would say. But so therefore, it's rather stomach feeling if I really can trust these people, and trust as well. When we are a trusted company, or a company which trust matters a lot. And if you not can trust your employees, how should then the consumer or the customer trust us? So it needs this kind of come from inside. So I go rather from trust to, and as well at the end I said as well, there need to be a certain education or a certain capability it needs to come along with. But this is normally the case when we are hired them. To give a kind of an advice to the younger one, it's always kind of, I'm not the messiah or whatever, but I would rather say to the younger ones, look, be open, don't fix kind of a journey, be open that the journey goes sometimes not really always straightforward. It might have some curves, it might have some up and down hills on that way. Never give up in that sense. I would say be part of the digitalization, be part of the IT community. I'm a strong believer that IT plays even more important role in the future. Having said that, when I'm talking to my son, he's 10 years old, he's always exciting. He always say, look, Papa, I want to become kind of an IT guy. For sure, he likes all the gadgets which are laying around in our home. But he as well is very much into kind of being programming, and I think programming or cybersecurity plays a kind of a more important role in the next few years. It's a booming market in that sense, booming in the sense of cybersecurity to protect is booming, but as well the attacks are booming. So I think there, if you have kind of a journey in that area and combine it with law, for instance, because I think it's as well getting more important in the future that this kind of cybersecurity can be followed up, that it can be as well prosecuted, certain things as well. So if you have this kind of IT law understanding, I think as well something which probably goes very long with everything in the next future. But the most important of all is be patient about this, what you do, then you can achieve as well within that sector, within that field, almost everything.
Markus, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Thank you everybody who stayed all the way till the end of this video. Make sure you stay tuned a couple of more seconds so you see who is up next week. And have a great Monday, and I'll see you next week.
Hi everyone, my name is Cédric and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Arbria Labs. Next week we'll be talking about rapid creation or digital human avatars on mobile phones and its applications on pre-visualization of breast reconstructive and plastic surgery. Make sure to tune in and subscribe to the channel.